Hey everyone. So this is how class is going to work from now on. I will usually just present a slideshow or show you a video, and from there we can still have kind of our normal usual class. So you probably do want to take notes. We will have a quiz on every Friday. We'll also have a worksheet on Wednesdays. So we'll have these lectures on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. I do expect you to watch them and answer the question at the end. So the question at the end will be worth points. Sometimes it'll be at the end, sometimes in the middle, just depending on how the slideshow is set up. So what's going to happen is you will watch the slideshow, and then you will answer the question in the assignment and do it as an assignment for the class. So pretty simple questions, just short, but that's how the rest of the class will work. You're going to get the majority of your points from these slideshows, the worksheets, and then quizzes. So there'll be comprehensive questions for quizzes and tests now, which means that you will have a question and you'll have to actually think about it critically to answer that question. And you will be judged off of the correctness and the um, questions umph, if that makes sense, like how good you answered that question or how well thought out it was. Um, So let's go ahead and get started on this. Today we are learning about the state judicial branch. So we've already learned about the federal judicial branch. We couldn't really pick up where we left off because that takes a lot of in-class work, which we don't have anymore. So we are going to start up here by finishing learning about the judicial branch. Let's go ahead and take a look at what power our state has under the judicial branch and how that kind of differs a little bit from the federal level of this. So let's go ahead and look at this real quick. So here are the courts in order at the state level. So first we have the Supreme Court. Um, Obviously, it's always has the final say of any law. So that's going to be at any level of government. We are going to have the Supreme Court for that. Again, we have a state level court of appeals. So it's going to lessen the workload of the Supreme Court. So you guys have already seen these. These are the same for the legislative level or the executive level um, of the government. So it's the same at the state level. These are also going to be called the appellate courts. So we have one of these in Phoenix, and each state has courts of appeals as well as the Supreme Court um, that they can go to lessen the work of the Supreme Court and to rule the final constitutionality of a law. Um, the next thing we're going to have are major trial courts. So these are going to be specifically courts for civil cases of more than $1,000 and criminal cases. So felonies, which include rape, murder, robbery, DUIs are a felony, reckless driving for motor vehicle are also felonies. You know, domestic disputes. So anything that you can think of that are felonies, these major trial courts are going to handle this. So we have a total of 1,500, or yeah, 1,500 all throughout the 50 states. These courts are also going to be called circuit courts, county courts, district courts, or superior courts. So if you hear any of these types of courts, these are major trial courts. So these are courts that you would go to deal with any of these cases. Um, Recently, I got called into jury duty for our own court, and the trial was actually on sex trafficking. So you wouldn't think that this happens a lot throughout Arizona or at least in Prescott, but our court handles stuff like that because it is a court for a lot of people, and it really depends on where the actual trial is happening or where even the person got caught. Has a lot to do with where they get tried also. So here are the minor courts. So we have the major courts, and now we have the minor courts. So the minor courts are going to be the justice of the peace, so that performs marriages. Um, you can actually just go there to get married. You don't actually have to have a trial or a ceremony. A trial, nice. Uh, you don't have to have a ceremony to actually get married. You can just go to the justice of the peace, and they will give you a marriage certificate that they can sign for you. Um, they issue search and arrest warrants, and then they have minor civil and criminal cases. So, you shoplift at Walmart and you get caught. You would not go to a major court for that. You would go to a minor court. Um, then we have the magistrates courts, or these are called the police courts. So these are a little bit different. This is going to be minor civil and criminal cases, and it is mostly, let's be honest, going to consist of you guys getting pulled over or traffic cases. So those are going to be the most amount of cases that are going to go through these magistrate courts. Not a lot of people getting arrested by the police for anything other than traffic violations, which is a good thing. I'm glad we're not going having a lot of people going out and stabbing people or um, you know creating any ruckus in the community other than traffic violations. The last thing are is the municipal courts. So the municipal courts are for misdemeanors. So these are going to be parking and speeding um, violations, public intoxication, disturbing the peace. So these are actually what is you would go to these to like settle really super minor infractions that don't involve necessarily police needing to plead their case. So if it's not like something like a DUI or reckless endangerment or abandonment of your vehicle, and you don't actually need to go in front of and like be with a police officer and plead your case, you would go to something like a misdemeanor court where you would typically go either plead guilty or not guilty, and then you would pay a fine or do a certain amount of time in jail to pay that fine. These are going to be called city courts, and they are going to be like Prescott Valley's court, where you would just go in, you would be in there with 50 other people that are also have a speeding ticket, and then you would say, oh, I'm guilty of that or I'm not guilty, and here's my evidence. Um, and then later on, you would have to actually show that evidence to a advisor in the court, and you can either be dismissed of that or not dismissed of that and have to pay the fine or get driving school. um, I'm sure several of you have probably had a speeding ticket and have been to one of these courts. Um, Here is the last slide we are going to look at. So we have small claims courts. These are going to be civil cases less than $1,000. If you guys have ever seen the show Judge Judy, that she is a civil um, or a small claims court, and these are going to be like disputes between tenants and landlords, vehicle damage, unpaid accounts being like uh, you have a huge tab with a local company because you were trying to do a startup and you didn't ever pay for it. Um, Probate courts are going to be will courts. So these probate courts are literally just going to be to draft up people's wills. It's going to be stuff like inheritance, uh, orphans that need guardians. If you're going to adopt someone, you would also go through these probate courts. Juvenile court is going to be for people that are under 18, as long as it is not, you are not tried as an adult when you are 18. And these are going to be for rehabilitation. These are not supposed to be a punishment court. I'm sure everyone that's ever been in a juvenile hall has probably thought it was a punishment, but these are actually supposedly supposed to be for rehabilitation. So the best thing that they could do for that person in that situation, whether it be send them to juvie or get them a um, psychologist, or just whatever they can do to help that person to not be messed up for the rest of their lives. um, the last thing we're going to talk about is domestic relation courts, also called family courts. So these ones are going to settle disputes between husbands, wives, family members, children, really anyone you have a relationship with. It's also, so this one and the probate court deal with adoption, but one is going to deal with orphans, and the other is going to deal with just adopting people uh, from other um, people within the community. Like if a woman gets pregnant and she wants to put her son or daughter up for adoption. It's also going to deal with things like child support after a divorce, or neglected children. So actually going to like CPS. I don't think it's called CPS anymore, but I'm sure you could look that up. Um, but um, on a huge amount of the time, this is just going to be for divorce cases. So it's going to be mostly a husband or wife divorces their significant other, and it's going to be dealing with who gets the children, who has to pay child support, how long do you have to pay child support. Um, so I hope you guys got a really good overview of how many courts there really are within the state. So remember all of the courts that we saw at the federal level, these are all individual for each state. So each state has their own courts, and these are all of the courts. So what I really want you to do for the question today is I want you to research a court case that has recently happened in Arizona. I looked it up, and there are a ton of court cases still going on, and they are still impacting people. I just recently read about one that someone accidentally purposefully killed their child by locking them in a closet, and they were super malnourished. They just stopped taking care of them. So that would have been a case that would have been handled here in Arizona. And it is a really interesting case. I mean, what do you do in that situation? What happens to the parent? So I want you to research a case that is happening, and then I want you to just answer these short questions about them. Um, what court were they in? Should be a pretty easy one to find. What was the case about? What was the outcome of the case? If it's still going on, you can just say it's still going on. And how does this case affect a community? Like, does the one in Flagstaff actually affect the community? Does it affect you personally? Will it have an overall impact of what happens? So go ahead and answer those questions in the assignment space. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. I will talk to you very soon. And I hope you got something out of this. I hope you guys all got to see what's going on in our state. So have a great one.